We're halfway done, man. Halfway done.
Halfway done and 8-0. You can't do better than that. The second half of the season gets going for the 49ers on the national stage. It's a battle for the driver's seat in the NFC West as Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks come to Levi's Stadium.
Well, since day one, the defense has been what it is because of him.
Quan Alexander, newcomer, free agent acquisition, has been laying people out all year for the Niners. Now he's out for the rest of the year. Grant Cohn, the Press Democrat, will tell us how big an effect this will have on the Niners' top-ranked defense. All right, and he is a media triple threat, talking about Grant, Iggy Cohn. He's social media, he's on television, radio, you name it, social media, and the Press Democrat. He's got a few opinions to share, and he never holds back. On the Mercedes-Benz Sports Weekend next. Well, we've got a lot more coming up for you on the Mercedes-Benz Sports Weekend. As promised, our guy, Mr. Cohn, coming back. And last year he was here, and he told me that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were perhaps already on the hot seat. We got to talk about that, man. We're not letting him off the hook.
Yeah, you said it. He's not afraid to step out with his opinions, whether it's quarterbacks who play too much ping pong, or if we have a firm grasp on the meaning of being on the hot seat. Grant Cohn puts it out there regularly in the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and he'll be here when we come back.
We're going to haze him a little bit.
You wrote that it's possible that Kyle Shanahan could be on the hot seat right now. Explain.
Absolutely. Well, when you lose to the Arizona Cardinals twice in one season, I think it's time to be on the hot seat.
But Grant, I gotta say, I mean, it's a 6-year contract, man. They're not. I can guarantee they're not even thinking about a hot seat.
That's not how the hot seat works. It's not up to them.
All right, Grant. That's a video from almost a year ago. And not only did you say that Kyle was on the hot seat, perhaps John Lynch, but you told me I really wasn't, up to date on
You weren't aware of what the hot seat meant.
You're not really familiar with what the hot seat is.
You didn't understand. I control the hot seat. I'm the one who has my hand on the temperature gauge. And what you don't know, a couple of days ago on Twitter, I recently took Kyle Shanahan off the hot seat. He's done enough. He's officially off the hot seat.
Right.
He can feel secure in his job.
That's good to know. So where would you characterize he is now? I mean, he's on the high and mighty seat, probably, right?
I think he needed to make the playoffs this year to keep his job. I think if he missed the playoffs 3 years in a row, he could have been on a real hot seat.
All right, tell us about the impact. The defense has been the obvious strength of the 49ers this year, dominant in some games. Now they're facing the most mobile quarterback in the league with one of their starting linebackers out for the rest of the season. How do you think they're going to perform in the absence with Quan Alexander's absence?
Yeah, the defense carried the team the first half of the season. I think the offense is going to have to carry the team the next half of the season because it's still a good defense. But Quan Alexander, he wasn't their best player, but he was the heart of the defense. He was the machismo of the defense.
He has a motor, doesn't he? There's
Absolutely.
No question about that.
Every good defense needs one player who's almost dirty, who was willing to take it to the edge and maybe beyond, and he was that guy. He got kicked out of the first game for hitting Jameis Winston in the head. They don't really have any guy who can replicate what he did. They're still a good defense, but I think it's going to be an offensive team moving forward.
It is going to be tough. One of the guys that they have that, could be considered the machismo of the defense would be Richard Sherman. Now, he's got a guy who he doesn't particularly like on the other side of the ball, Russell Wilson. And, what's going on there? He's still got a chip on his shoulder?
Still has a chip on his shoulder. And I bet the Seahawks have a chip on their shoulder because he's talked a lot of crap about them and said that they're not that good. Russell Wilson's not that good. I think they're going to go after Richard Sherman because that's what every other team's doing. If you watch the coach's tape and look real close, he's not what he used to be. He's still good. 3 interceptions, good tackler, but he gives up some separation. And if you want to go after someone on third down, he's the guy. He's working so hard to not give up the deep pass, he's giving up the first down. You saw at the end of that Cardinals game, he missed that tackle of Andy Isabella when he went 88 yards. And afterwards, Sherman was screaming at the players, at the coaches, and he went to the post-game press conference and said we needed to be humbled. I think a lot of the players kind of giggled internally because Sherman isn't Quan Alexander. He's not necessarily the leader of the team. And I think a lot of them look at him as being over the hill. So when he talks like that, it's like, you need to be the best player on the defense to talk like that. And I think a lot of them are like, you know what, we won the game, Richard. You were part of the reason that things were dicey to begin with. Maybe look in the mirror.
You might have given us the thing that we can play when you come back next year now. That may be the one that we join next year's segment with.
You have. We'll definitely have you back. One thing I wanted to ask you, too, about Jimmy Garoppolo. Last year, you were kind of on the fence about him being the franchise quarterback, and you were euphemistically in love with Nick Mullins.
Still am.
Yeah?
Still am. I love Nick Mullins. I love his grandfather. His grandfather, Larry Mullins, watches every single one of my little periscopes online. It's like he's my grandfather. We're like
This is a true insider. This is a true insider.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's done really well, and I think his game against the Cardinals last week was the best game he's ever played. He won that game with brilliant throws on 3rd and long, especially that last one.
To Dwelly, yes.
He had to scramble up, and most quarterbacks at that point would be looking for, where's the hit coming from? I'm no longer a passer. Jimmy's really poised and calm and confident. Found Ross Dwelly, who most quarterbacks wouldn't be looking for with the game on the line. I was really impressed with Jimmy still. That was a bad defense. He has a lot more to prove. We're talking about he needs to outduel some serious quarterbacks. He's never really done it. Russell Wilson is going to be the best quarterback he's ever faced.
And this part's coming up. That, no question.
You mentioned Dante Pettis. I wanted to ask you a little something about him. A certain columnist and writer said that, maybe he was a bust, Joe. Did you hear about that?
I wrote that. It was during a blowout win. It was a low blow. They were winning. He dropped a pass that didn't matter, and I couldn't help myself. So I went on Twitter. I said, he's a flat-out bust. I'm sorry. And I forget that all these players are like 10 years younger than me. They're on Twitter more than I am. It's not like 10 years ago. So the next day in the locker room, I'm walking around and Dante says, hey, Grant. Yes? He says, what makes me a bust? Why am I a bust? Give me a reason. What's the definition of a bust? And I was totally caught off guard. I said, Dante, can I come back to you? Can I get back to you tomorrow? So I came back the next day and I said, that's a fair question. Smart question. I don't have an answer other than to say, it's my opinion and take it for what it's worth. And he said, you're a freaking joke, bro. And I felt, you know what? Fair enough. We're even. I called you a bust. You called me a freaking joke. Now we can do business. He's a nice guy, and I felt a little bad calling him a bust. It's a little early.
Are you on level ground right now?
We're totally on level
What
ground.
you just defined is the thing, and I think your father learned that as well. When you write something critical of someone in a column, the thing that you have to do is be a man and go in there and face them right away. If you go hide and forget about it.
He's learned the hard way.
Hey. Well, all right, we have material.
You're on the hot seat next time.
We have material now to bring back and play for you next year as well.
We have video proof of everything that comes out of your mouth. Continue to say hi to Dad, and we move along on the Mercedes-Benz Sports Weekend.